Welcome back to the Dark Pixel Podcast. My name's Mike.
I'm Landon.
I'm Kason.
And before we get started today, wanted to clear any confusion, if there was some confusion, about yesterday's video. The phrase splitting up. In my head, it was like in the movies where they say, split up, cover more ground. You go this way, I'll go home. That kind of thing.
Right.
Some people seem to think it meant breaking up. That's not happening. Dark Pixel Gaming will continue for all time and eternity.
It will. We promise weekly videos forever.
Yeah, I mean, it's reasonable
Forever.
promise to make. Today we're talking about Xenoblade 2's music. I remember that some people got on my case because on a podcast back when they said all that stuff.
The trailer.
I was talking about I didn't like the music. Like,
All right.
we're going to talk about how good it's probably going to be.
How good
one
the
song
composer
is, at
thinks
least.
it is.
Then we mostly got questions this week.
Yeah.
That's something you guys were saying in the video yesterday. A lot of people were talking about why they like certain kinds of content and don't like others or whatever and giving suggestions. And a lot of people were saying, well, we really like the fan questions and you know,
Good.
I'm most interested when you guys are talking about that kind of stuff. So this time, we're talking almost exclusively about stuff that you guys suggested. Captain Awesome is wondering about games that don't make it possible to do everything in one playthrough. What do we think about games where you cannot complete it in one playthrough? You got to play it more than once. Okay, I practiced this. Railvory 4? Railvory the 4th? Railvory.
Real Vory. I mean, yeah. Or Ray Ivory. Is that an L or an I?
It's an L. At least maybe it was an I online. Maybe it was an I.
Because
Ray Ivory. Ray Ivory.
Ivory.
It's an L.
Well, I
King
typed
of
it.
Ivory.
Oh, you typed it.
I typed it.
Oh.
I didn't copy paste it.
Real
So,
Vory. Or Ray Ivory.
maybe it's Ray Ivory. That would make more sense to me. Anyways,
No.
he's talking about Nintendo's the way that they're sort of going recently with DLC. A lot of people showing concern that they're going to be kind of like other companies and stuff that used to be more like
standard.
yeah, or like quality of life sort of updates. Like we're updating this to make the game better.
Right.
They're kind of turning them into paid
Stuff paid
DLCs.
Yeah.
Right.
Jarvis Mott is asking about games that we enjoy playing with our significant others.
Cool.
Are there any? Yes, we'll tell you which ones. HD Baird has got this one's kind of hard to summarize, but more or less he's talking about games that have real, like, out there kind of style, and how whether we should be, I guess, the example he is talking about is Yakuza 0, how people feel like there's a big dissonance between the real serious, gritty kind of stuff and the real ridiculous stuff in the
Because
game.
that's freaking whack.
And
Yeah.
he's talking about how, you know, should we consider that is a personality thing about the game, and rather than talking about, like, this doesn't work because it's so different from each other. Anyways, we'll read the whole thing and stuff when we get to it. But
Cool.
There we go.
Let's go back. Yasunori Mitsuda, if you guys did not know, did the music for Chrono Trigger.
Yep.
And Chrono Cross.
and
Xenogears.
Xenogears and
Xenogears and
Xenosaga
Xenoblade.
1. He
Right.
did one song on Xenoblade Chronicles, the first one. He did.
The
He
title
did.
song?
It was the last song, the credits
the last
song.
The credit song. The
Um,
good one.
What's her name? Did the opening song?
Was it the Final Fantasy 15?
Yes.
Oh. I'm
Why can't I think of
just
the name?
remember her name. Yoko
Why can't you?
Shimomura.
Okay.
Yoko Shimomura.
Shimomura. Shimomura. She was the one
Yeah.
who did the title song on Xenoblade Chronicles. Anyways, he's doing. He's like the lead composer for Xenoblade 2.
Yeah.
So I follow him on Twitter, and if you've been following him on Twitter, I don't even read Japanese. I just rely on Bing to give me the
Bing
more
gist.
or less gist of what he's saying.
It puts out a lot of images.
What you
too.
do is you translate it and then you just assume the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
It's not the most reliable thing. Anyways, you know, I guess just some background onto why I'm excited about the soundtrack for this game now. He was working on Valkyria Revolutions before moving on to Xenoblade 2. And, he'll post photos of people he's working with in the studio and stuff like that. And then as soon as he switched over to Xenoblade 2, I started to notice that it seemed like a big budget was going into the soundtrack for this game. There are, what they're saying are there are 150 people working on the soundtrack. Now, whether that is including
Those
large
the instrumentalists.
like large orchestras and performers, I don't know, but that's still a lot.
Yeah, that's still a lot.
That's a large number of people working on just the soundtrack for a game. Also, before I forget, Ace Plus is also coming back to compose and help with the soundtrack, and
that was kind of the rock music. Right?
They did they did some of that too, but they did a lot of like the most popular songs, like the Gar Plains and like a lot of the orchestral songs that were really, really popular on the first Xenoblade. Cool. So they're back as well. So Sawano, who did the music for Xenoblade Chronicles X, is not involved, and they've gone back to Ace Plus and Mitsuda to compose this. So, anyways, he has been working really hard, staying up till 5 a.m. a lot of times. That's kind of how he rolls. He just puts his heart into everything. But recently, he was talking about a particular piece. He's recording some chorus right now with, I think the name of the chorus was Yasunori on duo on something.
Ampaman.
Anyways, he's recording with a chorus right now. I don't know how many. There's quite a few people in it, and he was he got some of the tracks back from his engineer, and it made him cry. He was so moved by the music, and he was like it's hard to translate what he said. Landon was trying to do it.
It's kind of,
but he was trying to say
like
it transcends being video game music, like this.
Right.
I don't know what he means by that.
He means video game music isn't very good, and this is good.
But
by consequence,
at the heart of what he's trying to say is this is amazing.
Yeah.
It moved me. It was amazing. So, going back to a few months ago when the Switch had its big reveal and all these games they were talking about, and I didn't like the music in the Xenoblade 2 trailer very much. I thought it was pretty generic. And the reason I felt that way, and that could, I guess I'm talking in circles. What I'm trying to say is that it feels like that could have been a temp track now. That wasn't like a piece that is more or less finished or going in the final game or whatever. And that they've been hard at work, like really going all out on the soundtrack.
Well, that would make sense if they had 150 people working here, and it is including instrumentalists. I couldn't tell if what we heard in the trailer was live
Yeah, I don't think
or
it
not.
was.
I don't think it was. Yeah, in which case, like, that soundtrack as it was in the trailer will not actually
Probably
be in the
not
game.
be in the game.
Unless there is a mix, which there probably is, but...
Yeah, that's probably
We'll
true.
see.
They probably will have some that are forged and some that
instrumental.
are not. But the reason why back then I was feeling like that is because I remember the reveal of Xenoblade Chronicles and how it had music that was final music. It was in the game.
Yeah.
And that music was really unique and everything like that. And so I was like, huh. But, of course, we didn't know at that time how far along they had come. It seems as if they hadn't really even fully hit the ground with the soundtrack yet. And from everything I'm seeing, I mean, he switched from Cubase, which is a DAW, like a software for writing MIDI music. He switched from that, well, not just MIDI music, but, it has all kinds of different applications for sound design and music composition and mixing and that sort of thing. But he switched from Cubase, which is what I use, to Pro Tools, which is like the industry standard. And he was talking about like, he said, rest assured, it'll allow 256 tracks or something like that. So the music in the game, it appears, has a large budget behind it. And that's I think that's really smart, if that's the case. I think Nintendo has recognized that the soundtrack for Xenoblade Chronicles was one of the things that was like people like adored about the game.
We would
And
rock
like
out to that.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Places,
We'd put that on.
shoots that we had back in the day.
Yeah.
Freaking like
going crazy.
That and Skyrim.
It's one of the best
that
soundtracks
happens with
ever.
a lot of RPGs. Like
Yeah.
a company making an RPG that doesn't allocate much budget to the music is making a huge mistake because RPGs have some opportunities for great music that a lot of normal
and
games
they're
don't
really
have.
long games,
And
right?
they're long,
So,
exactly. You
you know,
can't
if you're gonna hear
reuse
this
the
stuff a
same
lot,
track.
yeah.
You've got to make dozens and dozens more tracks than
Yeah.
a typical game would have.
Yeah.
I was thinking that we were talking about this earlier off camera, but the Symphony of the Goddess and Distant Worlds
Yeah.
concert tours, I imagine, are fairly lucrative at this point. That didn't used to
Yeah.
happen very often. I feel like I remember the first time
I
they
thought it was
announced-
only gonna be one
the
year,
first one I remember, like back when we were in
2011.
high school.
Oh, way
No,
back
there was
when. I
something
got
that was
you.
announced way back then.
when. Okay.
But that was close to the time that the Smash Brothers
Oh, the
soundtrack,
live.
Oh,
the
yeah.
live performance.
We got that with Nintendo Power, right?
Yeah, how did we get
Didn't
that?
it?
Must have
I
been
think it came
Yeah.
with Nintendo Power, I
Yeah.
believe, yeah.
But it was crazy.
That was
Hearing
cool,
that
yeah.
performed live, I was like,
That
oh
was
my
cool.
gosh, this is so cool. But I feel like that's kind of like a side revenue stream for all.
Oh,
Or at least it
definitely
can
could be,
be.
yeah.
So yeah,
Right.
if you really
Why not?
crank out a killer soundtrack, you could get people all around the world that would love to go to a live performance of it over and over.
For sure.
I feel like so.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would go see it.
Totally.
Especially if Mitsuda traveled with them, I'd definitely go see it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he's
Oh,
crying.
Every song.
Now,
Tears.
he obviously is a pretty sensitive guy. I've done so much research into, like the trouble he kind of went through at the time he's at Square for both the Chrono Trigger review I did and the Xenogears review I did. He works himself nearly to death on most projects. Well, he used to. He's not quite that way anymore. But it's indicative of the fact that he has incredibly high standards for himself, like just off the charts, like very, very hard on himself and not satisfied. And in one of the interviews, he said, like, don't mistake me doing all of this work and sleeping in my office as my love of music. I just feel like I'm not very good. And so he's concerned it's not good enough. So if he's breaking down listening to this, in my mind that means it's got to be pretty great, for his kind of standard of.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So I'm very excited to hear
Or
it
he was
now.
very tired.
Hear that? Well, and then that was also kind of funny is that the kanji that was used to describe the kind of crying he was
What
doing,
was the
there's a
word?
couple of different meanings for it, and
was
one
like
of them is
fukaku.
could be like failure. It's like I was crying in failure and so that could be misinterpreted as
Yeah, a little
it sucks so
hazy on
bad
that.
that I was like breaking
That I
down.
cried because it was so bad. Yeah.
That's not what he meant,
No.
but that word could be
Right.
It
translated.
seems like
that
it was
way.
like he didn't care that people saw him crying.
Yeah, it was
Wept
more like
openly, I suppose.
openly
Or
or
a
like
failure to hold back
indiscriminately,
tears.
like not afraid that people are watching, kind of thing. Anyways,
Right.
we were looking hard at the Japanese.
Yeah,
there.
I've never
He was-
heard it
it's a funny
used
thing
that
to
way,
say.
so.
He was using a lot of kanji in that tweet, which makes sense because it's Twitter. I would assume
You
that
gotta-
using kanji
Yeah.
helps to condense what you're saying.
That's part of why
about it.
Twitter is so big in places like Japan. They can say more than we can
Yeah.
per character.
In a
It's like they
character.
got the
Yeah, and then in America we're limited to 140, and that's only like 30 words or 50
Yeah.
words, whereas in Japan that could be 100 words, depending on what they're doing.
Yeah, so I'm very optimistic. I'm very, very optimistic. I really, really am more excited about the music now. Now that I understand how much is really going into it, how much money and effort and the size of the orchestra and chorus that they are recording, it's going to be a big, epic sound in it. Way more so than any of the previous Xenoblade soundtracks, for sure. So look forward to it. I think it's going to be really good.
Yeah, excited for that. And apparently it is still slated for 2017 release. Everyone's been skeptical because they didn't hear about it. No one knows how long it's been in development.
And
But it's likely been a while. And
Yeah.
the game, Nintendo's sticking to it. That game is coming out this year.
if it is, we would have to hear something at E3, you would think.
we
Unless they're
better
going to do
by
a
then.
special direct in August.
E3 isn't
or
the
something.
place to announce a delay, though. They should announce if it's being delayed before E3.
I
Oh, I'm,
think so, too.
I'm saying if it's coming out this year, we should hear about it at E3, right?
Oh, totally.
they'll
But
probably
yeah, it'll
do,
be
a-
an E3 for sure.
a demo or something there.
Yeah.
By the way, we did hear back from our contact, and
Oh,
we
from
have
Nintendo, yeah.
E3 passes. So we will be going this year. So look forward to
Pixel
that.
will
We'll
have
do
a
another
presence.
we'll do another E3 video, a couple more E3 videos or whatever we do while we're there. There was one more thing I was going to say about this. Oh, I was going to say that if Xenoblade 2 and Final Fantasy VII Remake come out this year, and if they're good,
It'd be a good year for
that's
RPGs.
the big part. If they're good, this would be one of the best years in my memory for really really great releases all in like 1 year. Like
Yeah.
I played. Let's see, what have I played this year? I played Breath of the Wild. I've played
Horizon.
Horizon Zero Dawn, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Game. I loved that. That game got better as it went along. Was the really
that's
cool
good.
part. It was like at the beginning, I was kind of like, I'm not feeling it too much. I wasn't a huge fan of how the game sort of started out. Not that it's bad, just like,
Right.
but I felt like it got better and better and better as it went. And
That's good.
like, that was one of the few games I've ever played where I felt like in terms of difficulty, in terms of like long term, I felt like I had gotten really strong by the end of the game. I had gotten, not my character through leveling up and stuff like that or grinding or whatever, because I mean you can't technically do that in this game. But I felt like my skill, like I had become really really strong over the course of the game. That
Like
rarely
in a
happens.
like in a Monster Hunter or something,
Yeah.
right? Because like this game seemed like it had some Monster Hunter-y aspects.
did. It
How
felt
much of
that
that
way.
came through still in the end?
The monster in Monster Hunter or in
No.
Horizon
Yeah, in
Zero?
Horizon Zero Dawn, how much of it was still like these big, long, epic battles with giant dinosaur machines versus like fighting a bunch of small ones, or you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah,
because everything I saw was like this felt like Monster Hunter to me, and I'm just curious how long it kept that vibe. Not like every aspect of Monster Hunter, but that combat, you know.
It was pretty much all the way through. Like they did a really good job of pacing and introducing a new type of enemy, like a bigger one, and like that felt like the first time I fought a Thunderjaw, which is like the T-Rex thing. I was like, oh my fetch, like I was really really afraid, and so like I cheesed it. I like hid in like some like crevice of rock and just like shot arrows at it and just like slowly whittled it down because I didn't think I'd be able to fight it really. But by the end of the game, I'm fighting a Thunderjaw with a bunch of other monsters coming at me, and I'm dodging around. I'm switching my armor, and then I'm switching the type of thing I'm using. And then I was, I had become really knowledgeable about all the different weapons and how to use them, and I felt really powerful. I didn't feel afraid of these monsters anymore. But like on first encounters, it was like, holy crap. They did a great job of pacing, like the types of monsters you would see and how you would encounter them and what weapons you get. It was just great. Anyways, long tangent on Horizon Zero Dawn, but what I'm trying to say is that lots of
lot of
really
good games.
sweet games have come out this year that are already like some of the best I've played.
Mario
So-
Kart 8 Deluxe, by the way, is really cool. And
That's pretty awesome.
the battle mode is
That's pretty sweet.
awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, if Xenoblade 2 and Final Fantasy VII Remake do come out this year, which I think they will, man, it's going to be sick.
Best year ever.
Best year ever.
Since 1996.
1996.
What was in 96?
Mario 64 and Mario RPG. And I don't know what else, but those two games.
Oh man.
Okay, Captain Awesome's question. How do you feel about games that make it actually impossible to complete everything in one playthrough? I'm playing Persona 5, and even though I've played the others, it's still a tough pill to swallow that I won't be able to max all these things out in one go. Especially for a game that's that long, man.
Yeah,
I know, and then make you play it again to
Yeah,
do
right.
all the other things.
But
It's an
people
80-hour
do.
game.
That's people do. That's the
Totally.
crazy thing.
A game can
You
pull it
play
off.
that twice, and you put 200 hours into one game. That's insane. I feel like this plays off a little bit of like how much of a completionist you may feel like you are as an individual, right?
Right.
Like how much do you generally in games try to get every collectible or whatever? And I usually don't.
Usually don't do that.
I usually don't try and go for the platinum or the
Yeah.
whatever incentive there is for that. I
It de-
probably
for me, it depends on how enjoyable the process of completing whatever
yeah.
kind of collectible
Right.
thing there is. So,
If it feels too repetitive by the end.
for example, in Horizon Zero Dawn, I really enjoyed doing all of the like finding the power cells to unlock like that final armor thing. That was really cool. But I did not like doing the hunting trials, which give you some cool weapons. It was like I did not enjoy doing those hunting trials. I felt they were just kind of boring. And well, not boring in the fact that they're easy, like they're tough to do, but it's like I don't want to repeat the same trial 5 times to figure out how to do it and get the blazing sun on it, right? So,
I like collectibles when it's something that's enhancing like an existing challenge, like the Mario games do. Yeah, and it's like that coin. Sometimes you see it and you're like, how the crap can I get that? But if you've played the whole game already, and you want to keep playing, there's extra challenge, so it's almost like having dual layers of difficulty. I think that's kind of my favorite application of collectibles.
And in Mario, it's really easy to go back.
That's
the
true.
levels,
the levels
are short.
2 minutes long. Yeah.
The levels are short, and it's like, oh, fetch, I missed it. Restarting the level and trying again is not that big of a deal, really, in Mario. So they do.
It's true.
Well, and I think I guess it's true of both 3D Marios and the 2D Marios, but in my mind, like, what I'm thinking of as an example is like a new Super Mario Brothers, like going back trying to get the coins in those levels.
Star coins or whatever.
Yeah, the star coins.
Yeah, the star coins.
Yeah.
Donkey Kong usually has stuff like that too. Most
Donkey Kong Country.
You know, have that kind of stuff.
Donkey Kong Country and Super Mario World are probably the first 2 games we 100%ed, I would say.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Besides like the NES era, where you had to
in order to
100%
a
game to beat it at all.
Yeah,
but
those probably are though. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
because we didn't beat like any NES games. I don't think we actually beat any.
Probably beat. I think we beat Super Mario Brothers 3. We beat.
Oh, Mario Brothers 3. Yeah.
Technically, I think we beat Mario Brothers 1.
Well, I remember our babysitter came over one day and kind of beat it for us.
That game gets really hard.
Younger.
But yeah, I mean, for a game as long as Persona is, which is like what, like an average of an 80-hour playthrough for like.
Yeah, Persona 5. Most people I'm seeing it are hitting about 100.
100.
And for me, Persona 4 was like 115 or something.
I mean, I can see where if you are really into the game, right? It's just like, man, I can't get enough of this. Where this kind of thing could be a great replay value aspect to it. It's like, oh man, like I can play it again and do different stuff and get more things. But that's too much. That's too much time.
I guess that's looking at it from the perspective of like, this is something you have to replay to see, right? And so, which is fair. But I also think there's an alternate perspective of it kind of customized somebody's experience a little bit more. I played Persona 4 and not knowing there was a specific character in the game all the way through. And then I'm talking to people and they're like, this so-and-so is my favorite. Or what? I'm like, who? Who crap are you
That's
talking
pretty
about?
funny.
And it's because sometimes, at least in that game, there's forks. You know, Persona 5 does a similar thing where it's a fork and you have to choose. And I think that's a personality type thing because, like, I will eventually, but I have yet to go replay either of these games to try and get stuff I did not do. And I feel like that's something I might do, but, like Persona 4 I'll probably replay sooner. I plan on doing that this year. But Persona 5 I'll probably replay for much longer. It's not the kind of thing I would do back to back. I wouldn't, like, be like, New Game Plus and, like, be right back on it again. You know, that's just me though. I also don't tend to replay video games at all once I've beaten like a story or whatever, and then I'm just done with it.
I tend not to, and when I do, I end up kind of doing the same thing I did the first time I played it. Like a game like Persona 5, whatever ending I got or whatever path I took, if I played it again, I would likely just do the same one again, just because that's the way I think. I'd have to really force myself, kind of like in Knights of the Old Republic, like, okay, I'm going to be bad now, right? And then make all the bad decisions, but it's that's like a conscious effort. What if I just really would just play the game? I just pick the same thing I did the first time.
In like Persona, there's sometimes this aspect of like you didn't really know what you were going to get out of something, and sometimes you realize like choosing sounds so funny, but like choosing to be in the drama club or like in band. Right?
Okay, right.
Or neither. And then once you've chosen those things, like the other thing, you've gone down a forked path, right? You've chosen a path, and then whether or not you choose to actually pursue that, because you could not at all. There's always that aspect of like, what would have happened otherwise? And I guess this goes back to stuff we've talked about. I think even last week. I enjoy it just because I feel like my choice had meaning because like. I missed out on something, but I got something in return. You know what I mean? Just like it feels like I didn't get it, have my cake and eat it too. which a lot of games.
And what you're talking about, it seems
Yeah.
to be the difference of finding this person or not. Not necessarily.
Oftentimes, yes.
You're not going to get this piece of armor that is really good.
Well, okay, that's the weird thing, is these people represent arcana. That as you develop your relationship with them, and we're talking a lot about Persona 5. I should think of other games that do this kind of thing, but as you develop your relationship with them, that enhances your strength, so to speak, in that arcana, usually up to 10 levels.
That's how Love Plus works.
As you talk about Love Plus. And so in that sense, like, if it's like the Death Arcana or whatever, or you haven't strengthened that up, so that is going to affect you in battle. It's going to make it so that you can't fuse certain kinds of persona if you want them, stuff like that. So there are these other consequences. It's not like gear per se, but it is like going to limit your other activities outside of just that interaction. So like in this case, I get why someone's like, I want to like boost all my crap because I want to have all my options open. Like maybe you didn't know by choosing to go with this person versus this person, you were going down a different arcana path. You had no idea.
You shouldn't know that on the first playthrough anyway.
Exactly,
Right.
yeah.
And then you get into it and you're like, oh, this is this thing, but I like these personas that are this arcana, but I didn't realize that I would have had to talk to so-and-so to get that.
This is why you have to get in the habit of having like 1 million save files.
Yeah.
So
Go
that
back.
when you go through a path and it's like, oh, now I understand what that choice was really about.
Yeah.
I would have rather done that. Just
If
yoink
you
back
care
and do it.
to... Yeah.
Again, this is like a
a
complicated
personality
thing to
thing.
talk about because
I'm trying to think of another game. 'Cause it's easy to talk about Persona here, but
It is, and that's what, Captain Awesome is referring to, is specifically Persona, but a lot of games do this.
I feel like
I have a different perspective.
most
on this,
AAA games today try to avoid having like a point of no return, and if they do have it, they make
It's
sure
clear.
to tell you that
Yeah.
first, because
Zelda's always.
I think the average person, if they feel like, oh, I missed out on something,
What
they don't want them to feel that way.
What do
right?
you think? Because now that you've played Final Fantasy XII, there's about 5 or 6 points in the game where you approach a save point and a dialogue pops up and says, you may not be able to save for a while. Are you sure? Like, before proceeding. Do you recall that?
Yeah,
First time it happens is when you go in the sewer, I think. But, like, what do you think about a very, like, breaking the fourth wall kind of, like, boom, hey...
Just want to let you know.
Letting you know right now and it's not like an in-game lore reason. No, it's not like a friend
foreshadowing.
came and told you.
Well,
it's just like the game is like, dude, make sure you are strong enough to go because you can't come back for a while.
I would say, generally speaking, that I would appreciate if they could have a more like diegetic,
right.
sort of like way of informing you of that. But Final Fantasy XII opens up with Bosch being like, use the right stick to look around.
It's like Zelda.
It's like Zelda, exactly.
It's like,
the target
hey,
knocking.
do you see that thing above your head? That's an action icon. Like,
Push X, yeah.
it sort of set that, I don't know, standard of how it informs the player really early on. So I didn't actually even think about that at those points in Final Fantasy XII because, like, literally the first thing that it does is talk to you for, like, breaking fourth wall. And Bosch is the one saying it, too. It's not
Yeah.
even, like, a tutorial prompt telling you what to do. It's Bosch is, like, instructing you to use the left stick and, like, watch out for the action icon and stuff like that. So...
pretty funny.
it didn't bother me too much in that game just because of that, but usually I would
think it's
say
good.
I'd rather have it the other way.
I'd agree with that.
The trails in the sky, they'll tell you, like, you sure you want to go to this region because you won't be able to go back, like, multiple times. And so every time I've been like, fetch it, I'm moving forward, like, screw you. Like, if I didn't realize there was something to do, then I'm not gonna like go back and like just go in every nook and cranny, which usually I have done already, like, on my way up to that point. But they have, at least in that first one, they have very distinct regions where it's like you went through this gate and now you're in this area and you're not gonna be able to go all the way back at this point. And they tell you, and I think it's the game that tells you.
It's just right
And it
there.
just pops up. They
In
do a lot of
Quest
that,
64,
though.
do they tell you?
I don't
Remember
think
you
they
go to
do,
that room
because I
and you
think we
see
got
the dude and-
screwed because of that.
I don't think they tell you, dude.
If you didn't grab the wings to go back to
Jeez.
any given town,
That's
you
right.
can never go back.
The wings.
I mean, past.
And those have a limited use, though. So it's like, sure, you can go back, but once you get past there again, Then I guess. Which is cool.
Jeez. I'll tell you another game
Who cares about Quest?
Just a game design issue, one of the many that game had.
Right.
I don't know. It's tough to answer. I think it's a very variable kind of thing. It's a case by case basis.
I have a slightly different perspective on this. So when he talks about how do you feel about games that make it impossible to do everything, it reminds me a little bit of probably the only thing that I agreed with Jim Sterling on when he reviewed Last Guardian, because I think it's a phenomenal game and he didn't like it as much. He talks about how video games have a tendency to, like, I don't know, just create this kind of god complex among the players, the people who play the games.
Right.
And you can become so freaking powerful in the game. It just doesn't make sense to have a character as powerful as you in whatever world, especially considering how you started out.
That is true of
in a
Horizon
short
Zero
period
Dawn.
of time.
That is true. I love the game, but that is true of that
Freaking like so many games, it's ridiculous. And you basically become like all powerful. Nothing can touch you at all. And RPGs have a big problem with this. I mean, you just keep level grinding, and before you know it, you're freaking. And a lot of RPGs, you have to kill God, and that's like the point.
Yeah.
But anyways, and so they kind of take advantage of that. But when he talks about kind of destroying the God complex that people have about just becoming massively powerful and just untouchable, I think that there's like three qualities of like God, what people consider godliness. It's omnipotence, omnipresence, and omniscience, right? So he knows everything, he is all places, and he can be, and he's all powerful. And so you've got, or she, the goddess in all place.
Good save. We've been PC.
We almost got so far. Jack. I almost got uninvited from that college campus that I was going to go speak at. Okay, anyways, so when you talk about games that make it impossible for you to do everything in one playthrough, that kind of lends itself to, the fact that a lot of games you can do literally everything is kind of a God complex, right?
Yeah,
it's kind of you want to be like omnipresent and omniscient. You want to know everything about this possible in the game's world. You want to be able to go every single place, and you want to become as powerful as you can possibly become.
Yeah.
And games that deny that, like Last Guardian, they become very interesting, I think.
Yeah.
A game like Breath of the Wild that has sort of omnipresence because you can literally go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
You're not everywhere at once, but you can go anywhere, right? So they allow that portion of the God complex, but then they deny a lot of the, like, you're omnipotent, like your weapons break. Like if you may have a super strong weapon, but it'll break, and then you're screwed, right? And so it kind of denies some of the omnipotence, and then omniscient, as far as like knowing everything. It's like Breath of the Wild, you don't really know what's going on. The game denies you those things, and a lot of games will kind of pick and choose, and games that don't deny you those things, typically you will take advantage of them and you will do everything you can do. And so a game like Persona 5 that is like, hey, fine, it's an RPG, you can become all powerful, right? You can do whatever you want. You can, I don't know, the story, they'll feed you the story. You're not going to have all these questions, but you cannot do everything at once. Like, we are going to deny that to you, and it's something that they know you want. Like, the people who made the game know that people want to 100% it.
Yeah.
And they're purposefully deciding as a game design feature that you are not going to be able to do this. And it's frustrating for people, but I think it actually helps. Yeah. I think it's really good when video games take away that God complex that we get from basically everywhere else.
Yeah. That's interesting. You know what that makes me think about is this is a feature of Persona because of the limited nature of the how the time system works in the game, right? Like, what I did not like that at first. It freaked me out because it was like, crap, but it's kind of like playing Harvest Moon a little bit in that, like, you can't go back, man, and you can't spend forever doing
That's
whatever.
right, because it's a day.
But
you can't relive that day.
Right.
The day is past. That's yesterday. Now you're on a new day.
And that's perfect because that's why it reminded me of Majora's Mask.
Oh,
where you can.
Okay, now that is interesting.
That gets around like what appears to be Captain Awesome's issue here is that you still have a game whose central feature is time the march of time, right?
Yeah,
and you can't avoid it, except you can.
But you can
if you restart. But what I love that Majora's Mask brings in that Persona. I feel like because of the way the Persona games are structured, they can support an illusion knowing you can only do so many things in any given day, they can support the illusion that there's more kind of on the other side of the wall. It's almost like the Wizard of Oz or something.
Yes.
There's
it's
not,
the,
and there's no way to ever
method. You have the implication of things happening off screen,
off camera,
and that gives you the idea that there's more happening than you see.
So I feel like this helps to create a world that, especially in Persona 5's case, feels freaking gigantic in a lot of ways, but it's not really. It's like a trick. But Majora's Mask, I think that approach works really, really well because it's an extremely condensed chunk of time, a much smaller geographic area, and then it becomes a character-driven thing at a certain point. Like the plot of the moon's going to crush us all is there's very little change in plot in Majora's Mask, but what makes it so awesome is like being able to, I don't know, take the weakness of this whole system and like use it more to your advantage, I would say, than the Persona games do. Because it's like you have to start all over the Groundhog's Day thing, but in doing so you can experiment a little differently this time. Maybe the guy will be here this time if I did this thing, and trying to get the masks and all that. Majora's Mask without the Bomber's Notebook would probably be pretty nuts, like trying to juggle all that
figure
crap.
that out.
Yeah, you'd have to keep your own notebook.
I don't know. I just thought about that though, as you were mentioning that, because
that's kind of the way that they dealt with the like omnipresence and stuff.
Well, you are.
Well, rewind, and now you can.
The same idea is that you cannot do everything in
one run.
3-day run.
Yeah,
but you can.
You have to pick.
You can reset and not do that thing this time. Do this thing instead. But like, what's interesting is that like let's say for what's the really long one where you get the couple that side quest, right? It's like that one takes like basically the whole 3 days to like really do
that's
it.
Pretty nerve-wracking.
So it's like it comes down to the wire. It's like a couple minutes before everything's going to be destroyed, and then you reset. But it's like then when you are done and you decide you're going to beat the game, you didn't do that.
You didn't really
do that. Yeah. You didn't save them this time. You know
That's
what I mean?
true. Yeah.
So it's like I got to see what happens, but like there's still within I guess the lore of the game a consequence for the fact that you can't save everybody. You gotta it's all about just collecting those masks.
It would be pretty cool to see a Persona game take a system like that. You'd strengthen an Arcana, but before a disaster or whatever.
That would be so it's like Hermione Granger's little time spinner.
You're right.
And she can take all the classes at Hogwarts like every day because she just goes back. Yeah. That would be an interesting element into Persona 6.
Which would be directed by
a different person.
Somebody else.
Yeah.
Who is he? The director of the Persona games. He's working on the Project Re Fantasy now.
Yeah. That's right.
He handed Persona off to other
Which is
people.
a big deal.
We'll see what happens because it's only gone up and up under his watch, and so it's got to be a lot of pressure for whoever the next guy
whoever's taking over.
Yeah.
That's got to be tough.
It's going to be like 6 years before it comes out anyway.
That's true. What are we worrying about? Captain Awesome, I hope that's... We could talk about this for like forever.
We could actually. There's a lot there.
But I guess Harvest Moon, or Stardew Valley. Those are examples that come to my mind of
the same kind of thing.
Kind of, especially with the romance stuff.
Exactly. You can only marry one girl,
and sometimes you could get screwed in Harvest Moon and be like, "Oh, I didn't know that you were going to move."
Yeah, totally. Then the next time you play it,
at least in Harvest Moon, you have 3 years before
your grandpa.
Your dad comes back. And so, like, if you don't become king of the festival the first year, you get another chance next year. If you fail that time, you get one more chance. It's like the annual cycle gives you a chance to complete
learn and take
next
another
year
crack at it
that you didn't do the first year. Yeah. So that at least gives you a couple tries at.
But I'll tell you what,
completing everything. But it's almost impossible.
If you want that buff dude who comes and takes all of your shipments out every evening, if you want him to come to your house at the end of the game, you got to put something in that box every single day.
And you would not have known that.
Every day. No, because the first day you don't have crops yet. But if you know, you got to go up to go get an herb from up the mountain and then drop it in.
This is an interesting point because I think initially, in response to your question, I would have said I don't like that. I would more often appreciate games that don't make it impossible to do everything in one run. However, Harvest Moon 64, I have played the 3. There's no way to beat it really, but I did the 3-year cycle in Harvest Moon probably like 8 or 9 times now. And every time I go back, there's another thing to try and do because I still haven't gotten that party picture yet. So it's like, okay, like I have a reason to go back in and try something else. Like try a different routine, try and like optimize in a different way. And it makes every playthrough really unique. Last time I played it was like 5 years ago, I think, and I got like almost there. It was so close. So I actually really appreciate that about Harvest Moon. As stupid as it is, and as like cryptic as it is, really, to like figure out any of that stuff, it has provided a reason to go back into every playthrough of it with like a new goal or a new approach. So it keeps it fresh every time I play. So I appreciate that.
So in that sense, it is like Majora's Mask. You just play the 3 years and then you start over.
You just time travel. Holy crap! All games are like Majora's Mask.
All games are Majora's Mask.
If you want it to be.
Persona 5 it's an 100-hour long Majora's Mask. Once the 100 hours are up, you go back. You gotta do something else. Oh my gosh. That's great.
All right, good question.
Nice.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you, Captain Awesome.
Ray Ivory or Railvory, I don't know which one.
Yes.
Says, lately people have been getting pretty divisive on the DLC in the circles I frequent, mainly Nintendo circles.
Okay.
Some are angry that Nintendo is starting to charge for things that would be quality of life updates in the past, like Hero's Path, the Medallion, Hard Mode, and they're worried that they're going to go on the Sony and Microsoft route of charging extra for day one and DLC and the like. Others claim that Nintendo is a business and we should be okay with them charging money for stuff like that as they had to develop that and put time into it. What are your thoughts on this? Are we headed towards the point where where incomplete games are the norm and you should be expected to pay more for a complete experience down the line? This is going to be a long one.
There's a lot of stuff
okay.
in this.
My immediate thought is actually inflation. So what $60 is worth today versus what $60 was worth 10 years ago is pretty darn different already. What would it be like? Probably like a $20 difference in inflation already.
$20 difference.
So they sell a game for $50 or $60 10 years ago. Well, I think it was already at $60 10 years ago.
It went up around 10 years ago, yeah.
So $60 times 2 million sales versus what $60 is today times 2 million sales. How many hundreds of thousands or not like of money are you missing today? Right.
Another problem is that companies are taking way longer to develop games now than they used to.
Yep.
And that's just costing the companies more and more money.
So with this as the baseline of the discussion, is it not easier to understand why they're doing this? As much as we don't like it, because it's like, I got to pay extra for this and extra for that. Really and truly, like what you see as an incomplete game that's made complete by its DLC, costing $80, is almost the equivalent of what you paid for a $60 game 10 years ago that was like complete in your mind.
I remember, wasn't Oblivion $60? That was like 2006. So. And I remember it was more expensive than the other games.
I think that next generation, the PlayStation 3...
It jumped.
Usually when it happens.
But it's kind of stayed there.
And they didn't increase that cost in the next generation jump. They haven't made games $70 or $80 as a standard. At least we're talking about American dollars, but I think that it has shifted somewhat in other locations. I know Australia is like ridiculous. The games are like $100 or whatever. So it depends on the region you're in, I guess. But to me, like, I'm not advocating for it, but I'm saying I understand like why these tactics, why businesses are using these tactics, why they're testing them and they're seeing like what people will accept and what they won't. I remember for a while, I think it was EA, was doing the whole like code thing where it was like you had to use this code to play online, and once you registered
from buying used,
they've sort of tested all of these different like restrictions and like ways of getting a little bit more money out of people. And I think that
the Xbox One was trying to be DRM straight through. You couldn't play any used games.
And the baseline reason, I think, is because inflation. Inflation has happened. People don't want to pay more than $60 for a game. They haven't increased that as a standard price, and they just by default are losing money every single year because the value of money is going down.
Right.
So,
well, sometimes exchange rates play into that too. The yen was super unfavorable around the time the Wii U launched. Yeah. Like at least on the Japanese side, it was that can affect profits as well.
If you want these companies to make these games, and you want the games to get more complex, and you want the games to get bigger, and you want the games, but you want to still pay $60 for it, like it's kind of unreasonable for us to ask. Or to demand, or and so they have to find ways to make up that extra $20, which usually comes in the form of season pass, and you can get all these DLC as they come out. Now, there are certain companies that have done this better than others, and that have created more value, have made it seem like they're expanding the game with an expansion, whereas others are making it feel like this game's not done yet. So that's, again, a case-by-case
basis. The day one DLC, which is what they're bringing up, I think I will likely forever have a problem with that, because that the day the game came out, they developed more of the game that you can buy for more money. But it's that day. I don't know. I will have issue with that for a long time. But when it comes out later, it's almost necessarily seen as an addition to the game, right? Unless the game sucked, then you have an argument. But some games just suck. That's not a difference from 10, 15, 20 years ago. That's just, even some of those games were bad and maybe felt incomplete. Maybe you don't remember because it's been so long. Yeah. But incomplete games sometimes would have been incomplete whether the DLC was implemented or not. Sometimes the DLC is used to fix the game, and that's always a problem. You got to pay more money to fix the game, right? But in the case of Nintendo, as is being brought up here in the question, like that's not what's happening. But when the question is that the way they're going? I mean, sure, but that doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. Like this is step one in going towards day one DLC, just charging extra money, and then you only need 2% of your constituency to actually pay for that in order to make up your profits. But everyone else got a less complete version of the game. Oh, I see. Yeah. And that's a problem. And it's a step in that direction, but that doesn't mean that it's necessitates going there. Well, Nintendo's pretty slow. So until everyone else goes there, Nintendo won't go there. They only just started doing DLC in the first place.
Mario Kart 8 was.
Everyone else been doing it for 10 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, it brings up the question, would you rather pay $60 for a game and you're 24 for a season pass so that you can get everything? Or would you rather just have the game be $80?
See,
and then they give you that stuff for free.
But that way, I think that gets at the issue of honesty, right? Yeah. If the company just said, here, $80 for this game, I don't think people would have as much of a problem. There would be issues, right? But because they don't have 80 and all the other games are 60, how come yours isn't? But it's the DLC. It sounds like a sneak. It sounds like by the way,
feel that way.
Yeah, and I think that gets at the heart of the issue. It's people feel deceived as opposed to $20. I mean, it's $20. Yeah. It's not that terribly expensive.
We might be in this period where expectations are shifting. Like our kids might never even think to complain about this. You know what I mean? It's just like,
they
what are you talking about?
They also likely won't have a physical game. It'll just be all, ownership will be different then.
The entire video game industry since the Atari has been run on the razor blade model, which is that you sell somebody a razor blade holder and then you will be able to sell them razor blades that match that theoretically forever, right? So a console, you sell someone a console and you'll be able to sell them games that match that. And that was like the business model the Atari was set up on. And it makes a lot of sense for consoles. It just works very well. But the razor blade business model is so tempting for businesses because it's like, if I can get you to buy this one thing, then you have to buy this other thing from only me because I'm the only one that makes the thing that matches it perfectly. And you're going to use them up. They're disposable. Like, you're going to beat games. You're going to play them and be bored and done with them. And you're going to need to buy more. You can only get them from us. And it's really tempting. On the console end, like I said, we've all accepted it. Nobody's complaining about buying a console. I can't say nobody. People complain about the Switch, but nobody buys just a console without a game, right?
Right.
You buy a console, and then you buy a game. And they're selling like bundles now.
Right.
But, people aren't complaining that, like, I already bought a PS4, right? Like, nobody's complaining that way. But the Razor Blade model applied to video games. Let's say you're EA. You don't sell consoles. But you want to get in on this Razor Blade model. So, you sold somebody a game. Well, there's your holster, your handle. What else can I sell them so they can keep having to buy crap from
now
me?
you treat the game like the holder.
It's the same business model.
Right.
That's the thing. Like, we've totally accept it with consoles because it's very convenient. The same business model applied to other things feels like a whole other alien kind of thing. But, like, you can see why they want to do this. Like, software as a service is really just we gave you the thing, and now if you want the things that attach to it in whatever form, that's what you're paying for. Or you're paying a subscription fee or whatever.
Or some way for them to...
An ongoing, because these
money.
businesses want these, like, steady revenue streams, right? So you sell somebody a game, game releases, media releases are really front-loaded, right? Most sales happen in that first week, and then
you want a way to kind of, like...
keep it sustained, And
that's, I think, something that CD Projekt Red did really well by sort of setting a precedent first after the release of Witcher 3, where they had free DLC like every single week for a while until a paid one came out. It was like
a year later.
People are returning to the game for the new thing, returning to the game for the new thing. It sets up this idea that, like, you have potential there for an ongoing revenue stream.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And who's actually getting kind of good at that, and a lot of people won't like to hear this, I don't think, but Ubisoft, why can't I think of it? I keep wanting to say Counter-Strike, but Rainbow Six, newest Rainbow Six user base has grown and grown and grown and grown. When it first came out, it was like
well, because they had been bad at that in the previous games,
right?
Where they had people drop
off.
Like
the Division had a really big drop off,
right?
Yeah, that's right.
But they've grown and grown and grown, and I think people are starting to see this and like, oh crap, you can get that initial game out there, and then like it can grow. It doesn't have to taper and die,
right?
We want it kind of to taper and die because we wanted all that in one shot.
Well, you think about that as a base concept. You throw out any particular examples. The idea of a game comes out and the game expands over time. That's a very exciting idea.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
wild.
oh, I got the game and I played it a lot, the first week, and I did most of the stuff, but it's like every couple weeks it's like it grows more. There's more content. There's more to do. I can continue exploring it for months, maybe years. That's kind of the MMO model, right? With all the expansions that they do. And I think that there's a lot of value in that, and that games like, offline games are trying to do the same thing and have had their failures and their successes. I think that The Witcher 3 is a really great example of how to do that successfully. I think that... let's see, what was like a really bad example of this, where the game was totally incomplete where it came out. I'm sure you guys can think of
For Honor
one.
Recently, I know a lot of people are pretty upset about that at release. I don't know what the state of For Honor is right now.
Yeah, but I can't think of any because I don't really buy bad games very often. So, but I think in this particular example with Zelda, it doesn't bother me so much because Zelda already feels so dense and huge, and you can take so much time. You can't
call that game incomplete.
Yeah, I don't think that game feels like it's missing something, and then that thing should have been in it. I mean, people could make an argument for hard mode or heroes mode or whatever because that's been in previous ones.
Yeah,
but I don't know. It just doesn't feel the same to me, and I think because part of me really understands. Going back to the first point about the fact that my $60 payment to Nintendo for Twilight Princess or whatever, or $50 payment that came with a hero mode built into it, I think, right? Mm-hmm. Is not the same. It's not the same as this one. They have to have some features that they can like make up that extra money from the value of the dollar dropping so much. So
there was a big. I don't know if any of you guys follow Game Explained, but talking when this news came out, they got in kind of a heated argument about it on there. And I think it was Andre came a couple days later and was like basically apologized. but he had a big long explanation of why he just hates this kind of stuff. Not what it is specifically, but like what it means.
The idea of it.
I think a lot of hardcore Nintendo fans, people that have mostly stuck with Nintendo games and consoles recently, may feel betrayed a little bit by this kind of stuff because it just like you were saying, Nintendo's just never done this.
They've never done it. Whereas EA fans and Ubisoft, people who play all those games, they're used to it. They're over it.
And you're upset, but it's the same old, like, I don't know, complaining about taxes or something. You know, it's just kind of like, well, we've been doing this for a while. But with Nintendo, I think there's some people that are reacting to this that are just pissed. Yeah. They're like, I never had to do this before.
Yeah, and I feel that. Like, I understand. I don't think anyone's wrong for feeling that way. And, it can feel very much like, you're like charging me for something that should have been in it.
And see, I was going to say that this, I have to say, I think it's a fallacy to say that this would have necessarily definitely been
that
in
it
the game
would have been
anyways.
Like that they had it done and then they withheld it and then shipped the game.
Yeah.
Now we'll give it back.
Like, we
There's
don't know. Evidence for that. I mean, it's safe. The Heroes Mode's a pretty safe one to say because there usually is.
It's usually in there.
In
I think that's the one thing.
Hard mode.
That like a Hero's Path versus hard mode. Because usually Hero's Path kind of means hard mode in Zelda. Because it not.
And then Innocent Hero's Path would be like the 100
the endless
level
dungeon
thing.
Well, like in the original game, they sort of changed like items or something in the map, like where things are.
Kind of like they did with Super Mario Brothers, I think.
Yeah.
They made it a second
so like
B-side harder.
That kind of Hero's Path where like things are different, Master's Quest, where it's like things are just different and like solving the puzzles is different. That's one thing.
That's mirrored.
Versus a hard mode, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. It's in this particular game, it doesn't bother me because Breath of the Wild was already so dense. I didn't even do more. I wouldn't have done. I can't say I've done more than like 55 or 60% of the content that's in Breath of the Wild. So I felt satisfied. I was done. I was ready to move on. I hadn't even done like a ton of stuff. But
you should have approached Nintendo and been like, I'm only gonna play half of this. Can I pay like $30?
Exactly, right?
There you go.
But with something like Final Fantasy 15, I felt like it was obvious that big sections that were meant to be in there weren't in there. And it was story-driven stuff. It wasn't like, there's not a hard mode in this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, like, it's in that game, the sense of incompleteness came from, I think, I don't want to say incompetence. That's not the right word, but just a lack of understanding of knowing how to structure a story the right way, how to like deliver it with the correct pacing, and obviously some what you were saying with it being rushed.
Well, because that's partly because they were showing things leading up that kind of didn't quite materialize.
Yeah, the trailers,
so a little more like archaeological evidence, I guess you could say.
Right. So like that's a very different thing in my mind versus the game's done, but you can do it on a harder mode. You know what I mean? Like that's like a little bonus incentive. Like I don't mind paying a little more for that.
Yeah.
I do mind paying more to have the story make sense, or the story to this character to understand why he's doing what he's doing. That's a different thing to me.
Totally.
And the phrase complete game, complete experience is obviously
too
subjective.
Vague.
So that's going to mean different things to different people. So I don't want this to sound like we're like totally defending like go for it, Nintendo. But what pushes back against corporate policies are the sales, like the people willing to buy something or not.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be it. That's what's going to drive these decisions. Although this is Nintendo, so
I know they're different. They're special.
But in general, it's like nobody bought this. Oh, okay, that was a bad idea. Or like, oh, our numbers say that this was profitable for us, and then they're going to keep doing it. To me, it's all about that fine line of like, is it this egregious offense, or do people feel like their game was improved in a way that was maybe unexpected, right? Like not something you thought you should have had.
That might be the question.
Like
here.
if it's
unexpected stuff, people are okay with it. Right. But if it's expected, that means it maybe should have been in there.
Like if they added a whole dark world and you know what I mean? Like oh dang, right? Like
that's crazy.
I buy that crap. I would. That's less of a thought for me, I suppose.
Because again, that feels more like an expansion.
Totally, yeah.
The Witcher expansions are long. It's like a 10-hour game and then a 20-hour game added on to like a 100-hour game. It's like you could play.
What they sell the expansions for?
The first one was 10 and the second one was 20, which comes out to 10 hours and 20 hours basically. So,
right.
Like it's like $1 per hour almost.
It's like $1 an hour.
I don't understand a word you just said.
Boy. Okay, so here's another question. Speaking of things that were in previous games that we expect and then we're upset when they start charging us for them. Splatoon 2.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It was released, very minimal. There's about 4 or 5 maps, right? And about 10
people
or 12 weapons.
Yeah.
People were pissed about that.
And
I remember
slowly they added
I remember that was a
more
big controversy.
and more stuff.
And the reviews were really low.
The reviews were low because it wasn't a complete game.
Because it was like, oh, this feels like it's like the
However,
features.
they didn't charge you for the DLC. The game kept expanding, and
it was like every month.
Nintendo's own pace, they decided, okay, now we're giving you these things. Here's some more stuff. Here's a new mode. Here's more weapons. Here's new maps. Here's new like armor and clothing. It was all free. What if Splatoon 2, Nintendo decides you're going to pay for that
stuff?
Yeah.
Now, what do you guys think about that?
Well, the precedent that you set before makes it difficult to do that.
Right.
Because
but speaking of Zelda, the precedent of Hero Mode, or of the Endless Dungeon and all that stuff.
It's the same situation.
It's a precedent,
it's the idea that before you used to give me this for $60. Now you're giving me less for $60, make me, but it isn't. It isn't $60 is not $60 anymore.
Right,
$60 is $40 now. Like it's not the same, and that's the misunderstanding that most people have because they don't. I just don't think inflation is not something that is like you look at it and you see it changing in the world around you.
It's clear.
It's complicated economic stuff that is boring, and people don't want to spend their time understanding that stuff for understandable reasons.
Calculations, rates, 2% compounded each year.
But it's not the same. $60 today is not the same as it was 10 years ago, and I think that people should try to be understanding of that in some form, because if you aren't, and if you demand to have the same amount of content for $60 today, businesses will lose money. It's just not feasible.
I think that's part of why you see multiplayer games dominating gaming today. A lot of like basically all MOBAs are free to play, right?
Yeah.
And like League of Legends just makes a freaking killing as a free to play game. Again, that's the same business model we were talking about earlier. You give them the base thing and sell them. It's a little different because it's not like you need the skin to keep playing a game. You can play it forever, but I think multiplayer games lend themselves a little more easily towards this type of thing, because it's like I remember Call of Duty when they would release new map packs forever ago. I was like, sick, new map pack. Totally. And it was usually I think it comes down to timing. I think it comes down to
they were free, right?
No,
they weren't.
$10 maybe. I don't know. I think it comes down to timing, though. If it's too soon, people are suspicious. If you hit it right, you can keep people playing your game longer. I would be disappointed if Splatoon 2, if all the extra maps were paid DLC. I would expect they do their old system for the next few months at least. That went for almost 9 or 10 months.
Yeah, before everything was...
Before they had released all the stuff. And then they added...
And they would admit
they released
an incomplete game. They admitted that.
Well, okay, so...
The game wasn't done.
Splatoon was a weird case because it was supposed to be a holiday release. Yeah. It was like, we freaking need something this summer. And so they bumped it up, but they're like, we don't have all this crap. So they were like, fine, the engine's there, the game works. And there's only, and they kept working on it, but it was able to be
Which is all the more impressive that it became a hit. But that almost worked for them, because it was like, hey, the game evolved, the game kept changing, and they weren't charging you extra for it, because they knew that they gave you an incomplete game to begin with.
Yeah. Right.
They knew that, and they were open about it. Later, a year later, they were like, okay, this game wasn't done. They didn't charge you extra for it.
They had that plan to do all that extra stuff, but they actually even went above and beyond that. They ended up coming out at the end of the regular cycle of maps
because the game was such a big hit.
And they were like, okay, we weren't going to do any more than this. Yeah, but people were going crazy, and so we're going to do 2 more things after that, I think. 2 more big updates with weapons or whatever.
And then they were on to Splatoon 2.
Yeah.
Well, another factor, though, that maybe we aren't considering is the fact that internet is going to be a paid service now for the Switch at all.
That's true.
And so maybe Splatoon 2 won't charge people for the additional maps,
you're
just
not
like
playing
Splatoon 1.
it without paying
But
Nintendo's.
you are being charged for it.
Yeah.
Even though
it's
just in a different way.
It's not that much money. Like, I'm okay with it if the freaking service improves.
Yeah.
If it's still what we've been getting, that's bullcrap.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I have one more thing to say, though, is that because
Yeah.
you mentioned, Mike, that this game feels complete. It doesn't feel like it's missing things, whereas other games it does. I think it's a mistake to just criticize across the board all DLC every time, no matter what. So in an answer to Ray Ivory's the Fourth's question or statement, that discussion point, would be that, like, pick and choose. Don't remove yourself from the market entirely. Don't remove yourself from all DLC forever. Some companies are doing it right. Yeah. And in my opinion, Breath of the Wild's doing it right. It wasn't day one. The game feels extremely complete in so many different ways. It's freaking massive. This is the wrong game to point out and to get upset about. There is a place to get upset, and if you really want your opinions felt, or the democracy of money, the way that capitalism kind of works, put your money where your mouth is. Buy this DLC because they did it right, and they don't deserve to be punished for doing what they're doing. It's the other people who do deserve that. And so in that sense, like, pick and choose, but you have to understand that don't criticize someone who is actually doing a good job of it.
See,
unless you don't think they did a good job, unless you don't think Breath of the Wild's complete. If you think there's glaring holes in it, and I don't agree with you.
That's kind of an interesting point, because, like, I feel two ways on it. I totally agree with that, but at the same time, I think it's BS that this is a season pass, like everything
that
at once.
Is bad.
I don't like that.
Yes, you can't buy one or the other. You have to buy all of it.
In the end, this is something I'm going to purchase.
I know,
because I want the holiday.
November one. I'm not buying it in the summer. I will buy it in November.
But I don't know. I don't know what to do about it. You know what I mean? How do you tell Nintendo, Fetch, I would buy this.
I would rather buy the $10 expansion than the $24 most stuff I don't want.
Yeah.
Like, because I don't think any of us are going to buy anything that they've released so far.
I didn't want the Switch.
I have no interest in any of
chests and stuff. It was like...
So, and the medallion is like,
I don't care about any of it.
The Mac feature's kind of cool,
it's
where
like,
it traces your steps.
It's like buying a bag of trail mix and being like, I hate all this stuff, but, like, I like the raisins.
That pisses me off so much.
Checks.
Like with Mike and Ike's and stuff.
Yeah.
The Mike and Ike's are mostly terrible flavors.
Right.
Mostly bad.
Yeah,
the red and the pink and, like, sometimes the orange are good.
Yeah.
And all the why do they not have a Mike and Ike's box that's pink
color.
and red?
Oh, okay.
Like, why?
Or
those are the only good
matter.
colors.
Yeah,
They're the only good
red.
flavors, man. Like, all the rest of those flavors are terrible. I literally, like, put the green ones in my mouth. It's like, I'll spit it out. It's disgusting.
Totally.
That's what I do with Skittles now. I take the green ones out, because the green ones used to be lime. It would complement it.
Yeah.
Now they're green apple, and it's like, screw you, get out of here. I'm going to eat all the other ones.
That's a great point. That bad DLC is like buying a box of Mike and Ike's.
It's
I know.
Like a box. Like, life is like a box of Mike and Ike's.
You just take... See, but I would rather buy a Mike and Ike's that's just the red or pink or whatever, right? But they're making me buy this and take out the part I don't want, throw that away, so that I have only this left.
That's the thing. It's the consumer choice, right? I think that the consumer always wins when they're given maximum choice. Right, well, like the cable, you have for all these channels. No one's going to watch 1,000.
You can't just buy the 3 you're going to watch. You have to buy 100. Yeah.
And that's bullcrap. But I think they know that.
Yeah.
That they're trying to bundle a little bit. You would never have bought this, but if I put it in.
We're putting it in, and you have to buy it.
That's a good question, Ray Ivory. Rail. You got to set the records.
Rail 40.
Going from Jarvis Mott. Jarvis Mott hitting us up like 2 weeks in a row, I think.
Yep.
Are there any games you enjoy playing with your significant others?
Ooh.
The answer is yes. For me, with Christine, she just she approaches games so much differently. So what ends up happening is I am playing a game currently. I'm excited about it. I want to share it. I finish it and then get her started on it. And she just, the way she plays is so slowly that it's like, I don't have time. I got to move on to the next thing. Generally speaking, because, like, there's just not enough time to, like, sit down and play this whole thing with you. So generally what happened is I'll get her started on something and she'll really like it, but then she plays the beginning of it. I think I got her Xenoblade Chronicles 2 years ago, I think it is now. And she's really far into that one, but she hasn't beaten that yet. I got her started on Final Fantasy VII, and she got up to around the point where she was like approaching Gold Saucer-ish kind of part. And like same thing with Chrono Trigger. Got like a certain way through it. That wasn't anyone's fault. My hard drive failed, and the save file got lost. We streamed Undertale a few times, and she got, I want to say 30 or 40% of the way through it. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just the way she enjoys games. We started Xenoblade, or Xenogears, I should say, and got like through a very small portion. But it's just like our way of approaching games is so different that like I tend to get, I don't want to say bored. It's not bored. It's just like I'm ready to move on to something else.
Kind of antsy, maybe.
I'm ready to do something else. I'm doing this now. Let me share this with you. I've already moved on to a different thing. Here's this. And she's like, well, I haven't done that yet, you know? So it's like a pile on. And so, like, that's still fine. It's still, like, a good way, you know, it's still good to share everything. It's just that she doesn't really complete a lot of things in the time that I'm completing. So.
She's like Lucille Ball at the end of the assembly line.
So, I mean, that's generally how it goes, but, I mean, we like the same kinds of games. Fire Emblem's another one. I got her into Fire Emblem Awakening probably like a year and a half ago, and she's getting very close to finishing it now.
Nice,
very close. But
oh, gosh. Yeah, we play...
Guess I'm playing Super Monkey Ball lately.
Yeah, playing Super Monkey Ball. That game's hard. That is a hard game.
This is the Dark Souls of...
it's the Dark Souls of...
monkey games.
Monkey ball rolling puzzle games, yeah. It's definitely the Dark Souls of that. It's fun. I think she prefers more story-oriented games. So, you know, a lot of online games or a lot of multiplayer games, she doesn't play as much, but we'll play, like, Kingdom Hearts. She's the one that got me into Kingdom Hearts, and she just loves that. And we play Breath of the Wild a lot. And she's played a bunch of the Zelda games with me. But, all the Nancy Drew games. Those are the ones that are probably the most fun. It's like a puzzle mystery game.
Yeah.
That you can play and, like, figure things out together. Like, I think that's what we enjoy a lot.
But you guys do the same thing with the shrines in Breath of the Wild. Right?
Yeah, totally, yeah. Usually I'll spend all day finding a few shrines. And then, you know, when we play the game together, not all day, but when I play alone, I'm finding shrines. When we play together, then we're solving the shrines. And it is so disappointing when I get into it and it's a combat shrine. And I'm like, all right, goodbye to about 4 of my weapons. I'll pick which ones, and there's no skill.
Or when it's the ones that's like, good job at getting in there.
Yeah, you proved yourself.
You already did it. Yeah.
And you open it up, it's like, I already have 2 of these fetched.
Exactly. But usually you can tell when it's like, okay, they're going to get me on a whole quest thing getting to the shrine, and I'll kind of stop there.
Right.
And then we'll do that together. That's fun.
Nice.
But yeah, it's always disappointing when that happens. Solving puzzles and mystery games, that's probably what we do the most.
Those are pretty fun. Like, Krista and I played The Room.
Yes.
Room 1, 2, and 3.
Very good.
Those are like the best phone games ever, by the way. So, but yeah, it's really fun to collaborate on figuring something out.
Yeah.
Like that. It's really cool. We played a crap ton of Splatoon together. Usually someone would be like the co-pilot, you know, be like, someone's coming from over here or whatever, you know, trying to help the other person out.
That's awesome.
This is not really like 2-player. Well, there is 2-player mode, but it's garbage. We played a ton of Mario Kart 8, and we're playing a ton of Mario Kart 8 again.
Deluxe.
Yeah. Chris and I play Animal Crossing. I found a lot of people. I was looking at the 3DS subreddit a while back, and it's like a lot of people play Animal Crossing with like a significant other or whatever. Animal Crossing. I'm trying to think. Chris's been going through the Zelda games. Speaking of different play styles, like she playing Twilight Princess. You know, every time she runs across the dogs or. Are there cats too? Yeah, there are cats.
Oh, yeah.
She'll like screw around with them and pick them up and run around, hold them and set them down, and then go get this one. And
if there's a cat in any game, Christine will stay in that room for an hour.
Oh my gosh,
that's hilarious.
So
obsessed with cats.
Stuff. You can't get enough cats. We played some Snipper Clips together, so yeah, really looking forward to Splatoon 2, though. I think. Yeah, that's a good one, Jarvis.
Yep, those are the ones. Mostly, we like the same exact type of game. We just play them very different. So, HD Baird, long-time fan. Solid. He's always there. Comments on every video. We love you, man.
Most confusing profile picture.
I know. I always look at it. And I'm always like, what's going on?
Like test, like an ink blot test.
Okay, he's talking about Yakuza 0. He just finished playing it. The story veers wildly from calm and slow-paced crime melodrama to insane, over-the-top martial arts action. I, along with others who have enjoyed the game, have noticed the dissonance, but agree that it doesn't matter. I was thinking that dissonance may be the key ingredient that makes the game worth experiencing. I've come to think that dissonance makes up a personality, partly at least, and this applies to all mediums. Think of Metal Gear Solid, for example. Yes, we may eye-roll at certain Kojima indulgences, but we all remember those games. So when people wax lyrical about ludonarrative and all that, what they're really trying to articulate is that they don't like the game's personality. Perhaps that should be part of the analysis for the medium. Rather than talk about what would or wouldn't happen in reality, we should embrace the dissonance and talk about whether we connect or not. Do you guys reckon there's any validity in this approach, or am I spouting crazy?
That's very interesting. Very interesting.
Crazy.
Case-by-case basis?
Yeah. I know.
But no, I don't think you're crazy for feeling that way.
No, not at all.
I think that Yakuza 0 and the Metal Gear games, and I think probably to some degree Persona, they do that on purpose. It's like part of the
right.
Part of
It's
like
that
the vision
the
that they had at the
of
beginning.
Things,
It's
yeah.
like they set out with like the dissonance. Whether or not something feels dissonant, I think, is dependent on whether or not it feels like it belongs. It feels natural, and things that feel natural in real life versus thing like it doesn't that's not necessarily the same. If you establish a world in such a way to where it feels normal to have something really crazy happen, like that's normal for that world. Like in this world, this happens regularly. Good example. Well, I'll try to think of another game example, but I'm part of a writers group, and my friend Jared is writing he's writing a paranormal comedy basically, and the supernatural is normal. So when a person comes across something and they explain this supernatural reason for why it happened, and everyone accepts it, like it Ace feels Attorney. Right. Yeah, Ace Attorney is a great example of that.
Ace Attorney, totally.
Like in that world, this happens. And even though that doesn't happen in real life, it happens in this world. And that there's a craft to that. There's a craft in like setting the right expectation for what the rules of this world are. And if you've done that well, you can have something totally crazy, like Psycho Mantis telling you what games are on your memory card, and it doesn't feel dissonant. It feels right. It feels natural. I have not played Yakuza 0, but I would assume that it tries to set up the rules of its world to where these two sort of like aspects of it feel coherent. They feel like they belong. Maybe there's an argument to be made that they didn't do that so well, that it doesn't feel right. But
I think there's also an argument to be made that sometimes it's not something that is part of the world.
Yes. It doesn't feel right.
But it still works.
Oh, I see.
Like in for example, most of Edgar Wright's films. Like I'll use what's that first one he did? The zombie one? Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
Shaun of the Dead is a romantic comedy set during a zombie apocalypse, right? It is a romantic comedy. The heart of the film is the relationship between this guy and this girl he's trying to get back together with, and they had a big disagreement, and then the zombie apocalypse happened, and but the whole time he's trying to get back with this girl. Yeah. He's not really they're concerned about it, but it's not like, that's not what the movie is. And that's dissonant. That is pure dissonance, but it's not a normal thing in the world. It's a very unusual thing even for their world. But that's part of what makes the movie so funny. It's part of what makes it work so well, and part of part of Edgar Wright's whole approach to movies. He does this a lot, and he always uses that Sean, that dude, the character who played Sean.
Yeah, Why can't I think of his name?
Actor.
The actor.
red
He's in
hair.
Star Trek. He's the dude in Star Trek.
His name is Sean now.
Sean. So, anyways, there. You know, if you can think of certain movies that do that, and I would agree with H.D. Baird that is the personality of the film. You could boil it down to a personality, because I know people who don't like Shaun of the Dead, like at all.
Yeah.
They don't appreciate it very much, and that's fine. Some people are friends with certain types of people, and they get along with certain personalities better than others. I think it's a totally fair way to judge. But also, yeah, there's a lot of dissonance that works and that is actually important and that can actually help you, convey certain emotions better than if you keep everything assonant all the time.
I think it's easier to do that in comedies.
Yeah. Because comedies are all about
the thing
ridiculous.
is supposed to be
right.
ridiculous and lighthearted, and you're supposed to laugh at it.
It's
harder to do that when you're supposed to take it seriously.
Yeah.
And then the examples he's giving, basically what he's referencing is almost always used for, barring the Metal Gear stuff, 100%, but it's always used as a comedic relief.
Right. Isn't this wacky? What the heck just happened? Tingle coming out. It's like, what?
You think of the Lord of the Rings movies, for example. There's still comedy in there.
But
it
totally
breaks up. Yeah, it breaks up. Cause you just can't have too much of one thing. It's like watching freaking Sucker Punch or something.
Yeah.
That is all too much of one thing.
Yeah.
They needed to break that up more. It's just like, I don't know, people just can't take that for too long. You need to release tension. If you never release tension, you build tension forever, and then it just goes nowhere. And then you lose the advantage of building tension more frequently and making things more interesting versus... Anyways, but the word dissonance is interesting to me because it obviously immediately brings like a musical kind of feel to it. And what's interesting in we talk about dissonance musically, like traditionally, dissonance would serve a role of making something feel off kilter, dangerous, bad, wrong, the evil, that kind of stuff. And then there's jazz. Jazz is almost a genre defined by breaking all the rules. But it is not evil sounding music. They utilize dissonance heavily.
Right.
It is it was like thinking so far outside of the box, taking a tool that people thought was for one thing and using it in a completely different application, like completely. And so to me, that's almost like, if we were to compare musical genres, it's almost like the Metal Gear Solid stuff is trying to go for that jazz type angle, in the sense that it's using something that's typically dismissed because it doesn't belong. You don't do that. That's a rule. You gotta follow the rules, man. And you look at the history of jazz, and there's all kinds of people basically telling people you're doing it wrong. This is bad. No one should like this. Or there aren't good reasons. It's not obvious why people like this. But the end product is all that matters. And if it works, it works. So that's kind of something that comes to my mind. But yeah,
I think it's a great example.
Yakuza 0. The chicken, is that scene with the chicken? Like he wins a chicken in a bowling contest or whatever, and he's looking at, I think it's a chicken, and they say that it's a turkey, and he's like, this isn't a chicken anyways, and he thought it was going to be like food, not just like a live chicken, and he has this moment where he's like staring at it, and it's just like. Oh, it's just so... And I haven't really, played that game, but I saw that, and I was like, what's funny is Breath of the Wild, they're talking about having shareable moments, and as well as Final Fantasy 15 with Prompto's camera. They wanted these shareable moments that people would throw out on social media. And this kind of stuff, people will never stop talking about Psycho Mantis and Metal Gear Solid, ever. Right. Because
it was so crazy.
Because it was like, what the fetch? That will keep cropping up, and there's something to be said for that, longevity that that brings with it. Like, people are going to talk.
The memeability of Metal Gear is very high.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think that that's actually something that I would think a lot of companies are taking note of and will become more common. Maybe is this idea that we can have this really silly stuff in it and people will create GIFs and post them all over them.
Reaction GIFs, dude. I think about that all the time when I watch any TV show, and I'm like, that's a GIF. That's a GIF. Somebody's already GIFed that, and they use it as a response.
Yeah.
Weird world we live in.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I like it. Boil it down to personality, and then that way, that makes it harder to dismiss a game as bad.
Deadly Premonition.
You use it as
Deadly
personality.
Premonition is a great example.
I saw Parker was playing that, and I was like, dude, this is crap. Why are you playing this? This looks like garbage. It looks like garbage. The voice acting was like garbage. The story was so slow paced. It was like nothing was happening. You drive in that car forever, going nowhere.
It's all about
what is this?
personality. The entire
and
review
then
of
personality.
I got it after
Jim
a while.
Sterling had a video this week talking about, because they're making a board game out of Deadly Premonition.
Oh, no way.
And he was talking about how it was the most confident 10 he ever gave a game was Deadly Premonition. But he admitted that this is either a 1 or a 10 game. Like, there's not a lot of room for in between.
Well, sometimes you don't want to be like the person who didn't understand the secret genius.
Yeah.
Right? So
I
like,
didn't get it, yeah.
this must be genius, right?
Yeah, like he was saying, like, this could easily be a 1 out of 10 game for a lot of people, and you would be completely, like, justified for feeling that way.
Divisive game. Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, again, I don't know. Like, it all depends on what are the rules of that world in my mind. Like, are those established? Has that been articulated or given to the player in a way that the player understands, so that when something really wacky happens, like, you understand that that's coming? Or does it you get to that and it's like, what just happened? Like, why did they do that? That's what you want to avoid, and that's the craft.
Unless it's
right?
comedic, right?
Yeah.
The what the F is
sometimes
can often be taken advantage of in a comedic sense.
Sometimes,
like the chicken.
even if it's meant to be funny, the joke doesn't land sometimes. It'd be
that's
like,
true.
oh, that
That's
was
true.
meant to be funny, but that felt awkward or whatever.
Right.
And again, I think that boils down to, did you set it up properly? Did you lead into that moment the right way so that it doesn't feel wrong when it happens? And, again, I don't play a lot of bad games, so I can't think of any examples where it's like, yeah, this was definitely a bad way of doing that, or this is an example of where that dissonance, as you say, doesn't work.
How about in A Link to the Past, when you first go to the Dark World and you're a bunny with a Hawaiian shirt on, like a Hawaiian button-up shirt, and you're a bunny walking on 2 legs? That's probably the only part of that whole game where I was like, I don't know about this.
It's weird.
He's wearing a Hawaiian shirt, dude. It's just like this.
Yeah. There's a cultural aspect to all this kind of stuff too. Not just cultural, like on a country by country basis, but sometimes like Bryce, for example, was way into Power Rangers, right?
Yes.
Way into Power Rangers. I've pretty much never at any point in my life been on the Power Rangers bandwagon. I think I was just barely too old when it first hit in the U.S. And I've always looked back on that just being like, and I've watched a lot of Power Rangers.
We actually
it's not that I avoided. We watched a
quite
crap ton of Power Rangers, but every time
like Parker likes Power Rangers.
But you talk to the people about it, and I was like, no, you don't get it, right? You don't get it, but it's almost its own culture, and it's created its own following, and it's become its own subgenre, and it's something that, admittedly, I think crosses more into the boundary of like cultural expectations or a subgroup's cultural identity, you could say, that makes certain things maybe to them more a part of what is expected versus to most outsiders. Like my parents, anytime they saw us watching anime, I mean, I would feel it too. I'd be like, yeah, this is kind of weird, I guess.
I know.
Yeah. They don't. You know they don't get it. You know they don't
you
get
don't get it. You're like, please
true.
go away. You're making
That's
me
totally
too
true.
conscious of like.
What am I gotta think of it. There's probably a game I've played where if like my parents walked in, they would just be like, "What is this?" But like to me, it feels normal.
Honestly,
like,
Near
Nier
Automata actually.
Oh yeah.
Would likely be it, specifically because of the way the girl looks. I think it fits fine for what they were doing, but if my parents were to walk in the room while I was climbing a ladder,
if you showed an
all of a
image
sudden it's like
of like Yoku Tada or whatever his name is, and said, "Hey, he made this game," it would be like almost an immediate understanding.
Right.
But if you just walked in and looked at it, like, what is that?
Like, what are you doing? What is this game?
I'm sure there are examples. I can't think of them right now, but yeah, I think you're right. Like, expectations are like so big, and in order to set the proper expectations for a newcomer into something, that takes some really careful setup in the early going of the game, making sure people understand, like, this is appropriate for this setting. Like, this is what is normal for the people. The people here get it. You're new, so we're going to introduce you slowly into it so that you get it, and then we'll go crazy later on. So there's a pacing to that is important.
Yeah.
But
that's true. That's true.
Yeah. I think it's rare that new genres or subgenres are actually created. So it's very rare that someone's actually the first that brings in a new wave of something. So more often than not, something's fitting into a subgenre.
Yeah.
And you don't want to tell people to operate within the rules of your genre per se, because that's like limiting it of itself. But I do think that those help to establish those kinds of expectations. Like, oh, this is like a Sentai, kind of like, okay, it's going to have these Power Rangers Kamen Rider type stuff.
Yeah, and they're going to say cheesy lines of dialogue. So it's like, you don't go in there expecting like, oh, this is going to be some Shakespearean film with some guys fighting. It's like, wait, why are they saying what? You know that's coming. Movements? So like...
And then he hopped on that motorcycle and they obviously sped up the footage to make him look like he's going faster.
Yeah, but like, if you're a part of that community already, you understand what's normal for it. It doesn't feel wrong, right? So... that's our thoughts on that.
Oh, man. That's a lot of very, very good questions. Holy crap.
This was a beastly discussion.
That was a good one.
We're done.
Good one.
Podcast is over in a minute.
Guys, we're still working on trying to get a guest to talk about localization stuff on the podcast. There's a few other people down our list, but I've hit up a few people, and they're just busy and also live in Japan, and I don't know how often they get asked this sort of thing. So we'll have somebody for you guys. And someday people will actually know what the Dark Pixel podcast is when I bring it up. And so then they'll be like, oh, that would be fun.
Yeah, I would love to be on that.
Yeah. In fact, I don't know, we rarely ask people to do this. But if you guys enjoy our podcast and know other people who would also enjoy listening to us talk about these kinds of things, feel free to share the videos. Feel free to like the videos and commenting. It really does help, and it can potentially give us more influence in the future to bring in people who are actual game developers, kind of like the Shadows of Adam. So there are ways that you guys can help us in that too. Yeah.
So also, I know that some people have been suggesting certain like other YouTubers and stuff like, why don't you get this person, Lore Runner, someone who comes up a lot. Right. We'd love to. We'd love to have him on. We're totally open to that.
And he knows who we are, and that's something that I believe we can get him on.
Yeah, for sure. We will reach out to him soon, but I think right now we're just looking to try and get some like... Industry people.
Insiders.
Exactly, yeah.
That's to other at the moment people. That's the kind of guest we want to like get started and sort of feel our way through how to structure those. Because last time it kind of just turned into an interview, which is not necessarily the idea.
Yeah.
But we wanted them to talk about their expertise. But and I think that was fine. I think that interview was really good. I loved talking with him, and I was asking him questions because I was interested in what he had to say. Not because, anyways, we structured it that way on purpose or anything like that. But I think we need to sort of like feel out like how to have a guest on and then make them part of a discussion, not necessarily like you tell us what you think. But when we have other YouTubers on and stuff like that, it would be nice to like have that sort of established so that they can just feel like they're coming in and just chatting. You know what I mean? Just part of the discussion. Anyways.
All right, dudes.
Well, that's next week. We may or may not actually be in a completely different format. Just so you guys
may or may not. I would say we likely after,
but
likely yes. But we'll see.
We'll see.
We will see.
Yeah,
we'll surprise you guys with that crap.
You look forward to something different or the same.
/ the same.
Exactly.
We don't know yet. But
thanks for watching. Yeah. If you would like to watch our work on YouTube, please check us out at Dark Pixel. We have a new video coming out. Wait, when does it actually come out?
Well, I don't know when it'll come out. I just know when
we have to have it done
delivered.
We have to have it done by Friday.
Yes,
but I don't know when it's going to be uploaded.
It may be up that Monday. It may be up in 2 months.
That's our filmmaking channel, by the way.
That's right, Dark Pixel.
We're working on that right now. Or Dark Pixel Gaming. That's obviously the channel you're on if you're on YouTube right now watching this, and that's where we do our game analysis. And we'll have more great videos on that. We got Lost in Translation coming the week after Monday. We got his Kingdom Hearts, first Kingdom Hearts video the week after that.
It will make an appearance.
This Monday we will have a Final Fantasy XII discussion. So look forward to that. Thank you for watching and have a nice day. Peace out. Peace. Goodbye. See ya. Later.
Alligator.
Have a good one.
Arrivederci.
Sayonara.
Sayonara.
Stay safe.
Stay
Keep it
dark.
secret.
Bye. I can't think of any more. Goodbye.